Hello, BookTube. I wanted to ease my way back into making videos with a nice, quick mail haul, but I'm extra hesitant to do that, having seen the ringing condemnation of book hauls that was made by Adam of Memento Mori over at his channel just recently. It's his latest video, in which he decries the whole idea of book hauls and the reading of pub sheets and the unboxing of books and whatnot, and declares just roundly that BookTube is done with book hauls. And in this isolated instance, I hope he's wrong. I love them myself. I love watching them. I don't see what the problem with them is, unless it's the book hauler is doing a bad job of it. But one way or another, it's made me self-conscious. since 90% of what I do on this channel is open my mail with the rest of you. I once again feel like I should ask for a disclaimer. Because I don't just open books and then mindlessly parrot. I'm involved in them. I'm involved in requesting them, and I'm actively reading them, and then I'm involved in assessing them in reviews. So I'd like to think that makes them active content on my channel rather than just some of the things that Adam referred to it as. But in addition to making special pleading for myself, I'm hoping that BookTube is not done with book hauls. I like them. I like seeing what the rest of you get, whether they're library hauls or used book hauls or new books that you get in the mail. I don't see the harm. I could dispense with them on this channel. I could easily make 3 videos a day about literary subjects without doing a mail haul at all. There have been plenty of weeks where I've done that, but I enjoy it. And I missed a day making videos yesterday. I had a demanding house guest for the whole weekend, and once he was gone, I felt a little sad. And it's kind of a rule of mine. I've only broken it a couple of times, but it's kind of a rule of mine on this channel that I will only make videos for you when I'm happy. So I just didn't do it. I could easily have tried to make a video late last night, but it didn't feel right. I was missing my guest, so I'm back now, and I'm hoping for a tiny bit of Adam's forbearance while I do a mail haul. So it's a small one, and it ends with a box. So we'll see what we have here. But I am curious about the rest of you. I mean, is it just that Adam made that video in a snit on a bad day, or do the rest of you find mail hauls to be tiresome in some way? I would love to hear it. Okay, all right. This is unknown to me, so this is not one of the ones. I just got finished saying that I request the books I get, but I didn't request this. So this comes out in September in paperback. It's a very pretty thing. It's Permanent Exhibit by Matthew Vollmer, billed as a collection of essays. Matthew Vollmer opens a browser window into his own mind with these collage-style essays. Exercising a rapacious intellectual curiosity, he seamlessly integrates flying snakes, mass shootings, emojis, pop stars, stargazing, ghosts, circus, and 100 other things. Full of keen observations and unexpected insights, Permanent Exhibit reclaims the art of letting one's mind wander and explore in the age of the status update. Okay, all right. Well, flying snakes, mass shootings, emojis, pop stars, stargazing, ghosts, circuses, and 100 other things is not letting your mind wander. It's letting your mind spasm like a frog with electrodes attached to it. And that doesn't need a counter-argument in the 21st century. That's what everybody does. the ability to pay attention to anything for longer than 5 consecutive minutes is almost gone from the human race, with all the horrible stuff that entails. But he's young. That is Matthew Vollmer, and he's the author of Gateway to Paradise, Future Missionaries of America, and Inscriptions for Headstones. With David Shields, the notorious David Shields, he co-edited Fakes, an anthology of pseudo-interviews, faux lectures, quasi-letters, found texts, and other fraudulent artifacts. And he served as an editor for the Book of Uncommon Prayer, an anthology of everyday invocations featuring a work of over 60 writers. And in 2010, he won an NEA grant for literature. Okay, so collection of postmodern essays. We'll just see what that's like to read. Doesn't come out until September, so I won't read it for a while yet. I'm a big fan of essays. I absolutely love them, but that doesn't do you a whole lot of good in the 21st century. So even with things that are billed as essays, that doesn't do you a whole lot of good. But anyway, let's move on. Adam didn't mention in his condemnation of book hauls that they're too long. I should count my blessings, but even so. What have we got next? Oh, God help us. Okay. All right. Okay, I think we saw this already, or maybe we saw it in a catalog. It just seems unthinkable to me, but it seems unthinkable, an unthinkable exhibit of Steve provocation, but I will read it anyway with a wide open mind. This comes out in October. It's edited by David Lowe, and it's My Darling Winston. Believe it or not, it's a big fat collection of letters between Winston Churchill and his mother. It's an edited collection of personal letters between Winston Churchill and his mother, Jenny Jerome, between 1881 and 1921, the year of her death. And once upon a time in my life, for many years in my life, I would have looked at this thing with just blanket scorn right out of the starting gate. But over the last 10, 15 years, I mean, those of you who've been watching my 8,451 videos will know that I don't hold a very high opinion of Winston Churchill. I certainly don't agree with the idolatry that has been bestowed on him by generations since his own. But in the last 10 or 15, 20 years, one or two Winston Churchill books have come out that I found genuinely good. So this could be one of them. I'm not going to decry it. I'll just read it the closer we get to the fall. Just a few years ago, there was a book called The Literary Churchill, which is all about Winston Churchill's literary endeavors. And when I saw that in catalogs, I thought, oh, come on. This is going to be hagiography of the worst kind. Winston Churchill was a very good writer, but he was also a paralytic drunkard. And for years and years, for decades, while he was in public life and out of public life, he was in control. He was basically running a Winston Churchill workshop, a factory shop of people generating prose in his name for cuts of future proceeds that he then welched on almost every time. And so I thought a book called The Literary Churchill is just going to be really annoying, and instead it was brilliant. So upsets like that aren't good for Steve. So I will give this a try. I admit, see any prospect of worth in a collection of letters between Winston Churchill and his mother, but you never know. That's the whole point of this, is that you never know. We'll do this next one here. These big white cardboard things. Could be a finished copy of something. Oh, okay, it is. It's a finished copy due in any day. It's probably out already. This is the finished copy of Anne Youngson's Meet Me at the Museum, which starts off with a woman, middle-aged, remembering that a man at a museum once dedicated a book to her and her schoolmates in their class. It wasn't directed specifically at her, but she, years and years and years later, decides to write a letter to that curator, thanking him and asking him some questions. She's begun to feel, it's obvious even at the beginning letters, she's begun to feel restive, a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit bored in her own mind. And of course, she gets back a letter saying that he died a long time ago, and the book takes off from there in ways that I think are very consciously meant to evoke the Guernsey literary and potato peel pie society. It's very much meant to evoke comfortable epistolary letters, epistolary novels, and there's nothing exactly wrong with that. And I think there are a couple of protracted scenes and a couple of moments at the end that really pay off the book. There's one moment in particular, if any of you have read this book, you'll know exactly the moment I'm talking about. You don't see it coming. It makes perfect sense, and it makes the novel. My only worry is that it's a very sedentary beginning. I mean, and I'm talking a large chunk of the book, 30, 40, 50, 60 pages, very sedentary. The book very much relies on your goodwill to get to a point where it has that point when you're reading a novel where all of a sudden you're not pushing the rock uphill anymore. You're rolling downhill with it. That wonderful point, which readers experience every bit as much as writers do. It's always kind of been my belief that the goal of a novel is to get to that point fast. I know that's not true, because there's an art in postponing that moment, and it makes the downhill journey all the sweeter the longer you postpone it. But there's a trick to postponing it too. You can't just bore your reader. So I'm not really sure. I'm glad I have a finished copy. I will read this again and see if maybe there were all sorts of clues I didn't pick up on in the first third of the book. We'll see if that makes a difference. This is exactly the kind of thing that I love to get another chance at. I could just, of course, read the advanced copy again, but I use this system as a chance to reread it. I will reread it and then probably write about it. But that's a novel. It's meant to be a very comfortable novel, the kind of novel that you can hand to someone who doesn't want their novel to contain barbed edges, acid, unreliable anybody's. This is that kind of a book. There's nothing wrong with that kind of a book. It's just, I don't know. Parts of it missed for me. I felt that I was made by the author to wait unnecessarily long for the final shoe to drop and for me to therefore be completely involved in the book. With such a low action, cerebral, very melancholy and sedate setting, the premise for the book, I was kind of hoping for more of that goosing earlier on, but maybe I'm the wrong kind of reader for it. I'll give it another try, and we'll see. And then we're at the last thing, which is not only a box, but a huge box. So that could bode well. Okay. This is another one that I've read. I think this comes out next month. I think this comes out in September. No, it does not. Wow. Oh my. My book sorting has fallen into disarray. This is due in early August. This is due in the first week of August. I've already read it. I could not possibly let it go, and it is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I feel a little guilty because it seems like every time on this channel that I call something absolutely brilliant, it's also a Mount Everest. So I feel like I'm not only adding tons and tons of titles to all of your TBR and wish lists, and also, as I've been told many times by many of you, destroying your book buying budgets. I also feel like I'm loading you down with huge books. I made no secret of the fact that she's not looking at the books. She's looking at anything she can grab. She loves to grab things that dangle. Don't you? Talking about you, little girl. But I might point out, you have Chewy toys on the floor. You have all sorts of treats. They're everywhere. You have food in your bowl. And you're looking around for something to eat. Here. As long as you're doing that, let's show you to the people. There you are. There's my little Fraulein. There's my little Fraulein. You don't hate book hauls, do you? No. Anyway, as we were saying, I'm afraid how long is this thing? I might as well prepare you. 700 pages long, but it is brilliant. Those of you who read nonfiction, those of you who are... It's Crashed by Adam Tooze. Now, I also want to recommend his book, The Deluge, which is astonishingly good. Fact-based, archive-based, not quite narrative history. The Deluge is amazing. It is a keeper book, even though it's, if anything, longer than this one. The brother of Christopher Hitchens, Peter Hitchens, referred to the Deluge as quote-unquote clear mountain air history. And he's entirely right. It's just clears away the clutter. It's just a megawatt brain sitting down and writing something definitive. And this is the same thing. This is about cycles of financial boom and bust, of of crashes and why they happen and how they distribute and what their long-term after effects are. And as much as I admire the author, when I looked at that subject ahead of time, I thought, okay, well, I admire the author, but he's never going to be able to keep me along for that kind of a narrative. That kind of a subject is something I want to read about in footnotes, but I don't want to read a whole book on financial cycles. And I was wrong. Dead wrong. I should have known better, considering the crystalline assurance in the writing of the deluge, just crystalline. And I loved it, absolutely loved it. And it's also extremely important. The temptation with books like this is always to cite their topicality, to cite their enhanced relevance. And I'm sure that when this gets reviewed, that's what reviewers will do. They will say it's more relevant now than ever. Because, among other reasons, the current political administration here in the United States is stripping away the safeguards and safety nets that were put in place on the financial sector in the wake of the 2008 financial collapse that nearly destroyed the American economy and everybody else's economy along with it. In the wake of that catastrophe, the government regulatory bodies put certain very common sense brakes in place, safeguards in place, and this current administration is stripping those away like crazy because they stand in the way of making extra money. And, to hell with the chance of cratering the economy again, which has led some economic theorists to get on late-night cable shows and go for the clickbait by saying that a crash even worse than 2008 is coming, that it's right around the corner, and that no one's ready for it, even though the warning signs are in plain sight. It's going to be tough for a book section editor or for a tapped reviewer, with all of that crashing in their ear every time they watch the news, to avoid writing that angle in reviewing this book. But there's actually much more to this book than that, so I'm hoping that some people refuse to do that. I certainly, if I review this, I won't take that tank. But boy, oh boy, I wholeheartedly recommend it. It is amazing. One of the great works of nonfiction in 2018. It's just huge. Sorry about that. All right, so that is our return to form mail haul here against Memento Mori's instructions. So we have Crashed in a lovely finished copy. We have My Darling Winston, a gigantic collection of letters written between Winston Churchill and his mother. We have Permanent Exhibit, a collection of postmodern essays, it sounds like, but I'll report back. And we have Meet Me at the Museum by Anne Youngson, which is a slight, charming novel about all sorts of reawakenings in midlife, all sorts of re-challenging of old iconographies, and with, of course, a hint of relationship stuff thrown in, on the unexpected finding of a relationship thrown in. You know the pattern. If you've read, for instance, The Guernsey Society, then you've read a book very much like it, only this one doesn't have really the backdrop, the grim backdrop of war. But it's a sentimental novel. I just need to reread it. I'll reread it tonight to see how deep the sentiment goes. When I finished the advance copy, I was under the impression that the sentiment is the DNA of the book and there's nothing else, which is not, again, wrong. There are plenty of times when you'll know that about a book and it'll be what you want. It'll be what sells the reading experience. But I don't know. I'll read it again and see if I missed anything. So that's it. That's our mail haul for today. Only one video while I go back to the rest of my life, all the stuff that was neglected when I had a host guest. But I'll be back to form tomorrow, I assume. I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.